Chapter 3 Nervous System 2 Peripheral. Cranial nerves. I had a dream. One hot summer day. My back door wide open. A slight breeze slowly blowing the curtains, like the soft memories of waves. The heat of the sun pouring itself like hot honey, dripping over my body and my messy sheets, warming them, melting them, into a pool of hot wax that slips through the gaps in my floorboards. The house is quiet. The sound of my breath, meeting with the sound of the soft wind blowing through the backs of the houses and gardens. My breath heavy, through the air thick with the new summer heat that hung in the sky for a week too long, before ever threatening to break with cool rain. It wasn't a dream, per se. I would say, in fact, that it was a nightmare. Well, if another person were to view the scene that I'd found myself stuck in within my wandering mind, they would be profoundly disturbed. For me, it was a relief. For in my dream, I slept both in body and mind. To depict it would be to compare it to the art that I was consuming within my personal work at the time. I spent a lot of time exploring my own internal body, and images of it being ripped violently open and displayed piece by piece. I liked the imagery, especially when smothered in what would become my signature orange, for its ability to make me feel something when other people expressed that its visceralness made them uncomfortable. Maybe I just wanted to be pervasive. Either way, I loved the work, and I loved the way the images filled my mind with ideas for paintings and sculptures and writings. It was a week after university had ended that year, and I was left to breathe after the general stress that fueled my ambition, so that I had felt that I hadn't breathed out for months. Now, I was almost drowning in oxygen, and I allowed myself to drift to sleep during the heat of the day. In my dream, I see myself as a beautiful corpse, lying in a field of long, dying grass, swaying in the soft wind. I saw myself cut open from my neck, drying all the way down from my neck. All that I had within opened the air. The thin flaps of skin pulled between my arms, exposing my organs, slowly turning in the sun, turning brown and pale, hard and mushy, rotting away as flies and maggots swarmed all over me, eating at me slowly, my skin turning pale, bleaching in the harsh light until I was almost gleaming husk of who I was. I saw my face, like Malay's Ophelia, eyes wide and mouth agape, as if my last breath had secretly escaped out my lungs. I looked in my vacant eyes, as I stood like God over the scene, or the sky faces down on the field below. I laid watching myself, eyes fixed on the scene, only moving slightly, swaying in a gentle breeze that rippled through the grass like water that Ophelia drowned within, her body growing heavier and sinking deeper. I was stuck in the waters of that field for hours, watching myself slowly and quietly rot. It wasn't the view that disturbed me. It was the length that I'd felt I was fixed on the scene, the eyes in my mind wide open and unblinking, like I'd slipped too deep into the dream and was slowly drowning in it. My mind aware that it was but a dream, my mind scanning each past scene, each blade of grass slowly yellowing as if bathed in sepia, each fly twitching before flying in circles around me in faint buzzing hums, the maggots squirming in twisting loops as they worm into my organs, slowly deflating and bruising, growing stale, drying out in the sun. The sun had disappeared behind the clouds when I was able to pull myself away from the dream. I picked up my body, light as it was without the heat of the sun. I rubbed my eyes to push out the sleep before pulling myself out of bed and carrying on with my day, only slightly disturbed. Ganglia. My father started an allotment one day during one of the summers of my childhood. He bought it abandoned on the recommendation of a friend. They had one a few rows up. The ground was dry and solid. Weeds mottled the dirt like pimples that were yet to sprout from my face. There was a bike abandoned too, twisted, broken and rusted. He made me wheel it down across the dusty dirt paths that spread like veins between the allotments to a large pile of rubbish, where the cars would turn in and park, their tyres slowly sinking into the mud. He troweled the ground, breaking apart the crusty earth into rough chunks, pulling the weeds where we spotted them. He brought bag after bag of soil, pouring it around, splitting the allotment into separate plots where he planned to grow separate things. He took me around to home base, where we bought all the tools he needed, all the seeds he could find, and large planks of wood to build a fence and shed, all piled atop each other precariously on the large wheeled trolley that squeaked and meandered with a wonky wheel. He grew potatoes, barrels of the things, yellow and purple and brown. He made them into chips and roasties and mash. Not the purple potatoes though, for he fed his family that, and it congealed like cement and turned in their stomachs. He grew leeks and cabbages and peas and pumpkins too. His pumpkins grew to be large, plump and orange, until he drove up one day to find them stolen and smashed against the dirt road, fresh from rain, the pale orange guts smeared and slowly browning in the wet mud. He blamed it on teenagers. He took me on dog walks around the surrounding fields, down a broken bridge, over a small trickling river, and through a baby orchard. The prepubescent trees, skinny like twigs, poking from the ground, held upright by a tube of white plastic. Rui, my dog, winding between the trees, his long lead weaving around itself and the pole-like trees, tying itself together in large knots, until the lead stopped pulling against the collar, until we untied the knots, winding the lead back in its big loops around his arm. He took us to an enclosed field, where we could let the dog off the lead, and he could run, doing rapid laps, a burr of brown and black through the mossy green grass, until we lost him amongst the tall blades, and had to search amongst them, chasing him round until he tired, and we could attach him to the lead again and drag him home. After a few years, his back started to ache, and the barrels of the potatoes in the garden started to sprout and harden, and the earth that froze over winter never got to be troweled and soiled in the spring. His tools growing dust in the small shed, its paint peeling on the sides, until one day, sat on the sofa, he realised he hadn't touched its ground in over a year, and the thought of the work it took to maintain it made him wince. He sold it online within a month, the tools and the shed too, for he knew that he didn't need them. Enteric nervous system. It would seem that I'd fallen into a little bit of a pattern. I would stay in bed, wrapped up in my covers, after telling my parents that I was actually going to stay in tonight, and have a quiet night in, just me and the telly, in my pyjamas, just to receive a text with a ping that would vibrate my phone with just the message, "Spoons?" And it would seem to be inevitable that it was always the plan. I would clothe myself and walk past my parents' room saying, "Guess I'm off again," and head out. This was a pattern that I'd found myself in during the entire month of December, my first Christmas home from university. My first time back, in fact, from the day that I drove out of my hometown after saying goodbye to all my friends the night before, or "see you soon," as we hugged, determined that we would still stay best friends. Months later, we had done exactly that, and it was them that I would be journeying through town to see. The walk was exactly the same, as I had always remembered it being, past my old school and through the Asgarby Park into the Weatherspoons. It was originally two separate pubs that had been bought out, the walls between the two knocked down and turned into the main pub on the high street, or at least the one that I and most of the people in my hometown went to the most. 9 times out of 10, we aimed to sit in a booth, all of us squeezing around a table, pulling up extra chairs to be in a cramped semicircle, in the end closing us in as we all dove to our phones to order on the app. As we exchanged the platitudes, asking about our day, and that it was only a week or a few days until Christmas. That Christmas was the one that I found my new staple drink with its spoons, a blood orange gin and lemonade, as I had found out the price of a double was cheaper than the price of a single of any other gin, a fact that I was more than happy to tell everyone. I thought it tasted alright, but I enjoyed it most because it meant that I could afford to go out drinking as often as possible within the small time frame of my trip back home, before my next student loan payment came in. The orange gin, fizzing in an almost violent shade of orange, that, when it would arrive at the table, be passed immediately to me by the server, as I had been there so much that my order was surely memorised. There was always a mixture of different people that I'd be seeing at the spoons. My normal friendship group, my friends that I'd made at my childhood drama club, a mixture of the two, sometimes being joined by one of my cousins that also happened to be out that night. Sometimes we would go and slowly draw more and more people in, old acquaintances from school or old jobs that we would chat with. Hiya, long time no see. What are you doing now? I'm at uni. You? Just working. The Christmas. What shocked me the most was the sheer density of people that I'd had only partial conversations with at school that I was now seeing while out and had a lot to say to, slowly seeing more and more over the evening until we pushed tables together and seemed to take over the corner of the room, all people speaking over each other to either side of a cluster of tables and chairs, people leaving to smoke or vape, plates of chips or pizzas being delivered, eaten, then the empty bowls and plates being stacked and carried away. We would order rounds of shots or bombs that we would choke down, take it into rounds to buy them, and deliver them back to the table on a large tray lined with the army of small shot glasses that we would then down and stack crudely until the piles would collapse, spilling the dregs over the sticky table. We would drink until our heads got squiffy, and the lighting in the pub would smear like liquid gold over the tables and chairs, and the bell for the last call would ring, calling out, flying like a bird, and we would stumble home, grasping each other in drunk hugs, and we would stumble home and into bed, where, the next morning, tired and dehydrated, I would tell my parents that, tonight, I'm staying in, until I get the inevitable message. Spoons?